Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hormone Helper podcast. I'm Coach Andrew, your hormone helper from Fit for All Fitness. I personally coach over 1,600 men and women to help better understand their hormones so they can lose weight and get their metabolism back on track. With this podcast, you're going to hear from me and my special guests about everything from metabolism to thyroid to weight loss. And we even talk a little bit of sexy time as we chat to spread more knowledge thick like butter on your hormones. If you're ready to learn, I'm ready to share, so let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. Prior to filming this week, I actually took a nice long drive to enjoy the final sunshine that the start of November offers for the year for us good old Canadians. Who doesn't love a good car ride, right? It was a whole 15 degrees out, which isn't much, but it meant that in Canada, I got to go top down with my car. So aside from painting, which is my second favorite thing I like to do, driving around is probably my best after-work hobby for me to spend some time with myself. How many of you have your own alone time? Time where you can drop off the face of the earth for 1 to 2 hours at a time and really focus on recharging your own batteries. So me and Lorna always make sure to have our own separate time because I find that it actually helps me feel more connected when I'm actually with her. While we don't have kids right now, even when we start that part of our journey, I'm still going to make sure that both she and I get that time to drive around or go for walks by ourselves. And I actually encourage all of you listening to do that for yourself too, because it's really, really important. So back to the story. I'm taking my car around the city, top down, sun is beating, we'll call it beating, little cool breeze, light out enough for it to be bright. And it's one of those days where you don't need the sunglasses. To me, it's like perfect, freaking perfect out. And I should be feeling fantastic. But you know what? I'm just not feeling it. As a matter of fact, I was actually feeling kind of a little blah. And yes, as a coach, I have those days too, where regardless of what is going good or everything that you have these days where you just don't feel the best about yourself. But sometimes it's hard because you can't seem to figure out why. It's hard to know at that moment what is throwing off my groove and say to yourself, I should be feeling great or I should be super happy right now. No matter how hard you try, you can't fake being happy in those moments. But at the same time, you also can't pretend that you actually don't feel bad, as you know that that doesn't feel right in the moment either. So if you're like me, you end up lingering in the space between trying to figure out the big question of, what does this feeling actually mean? So I'm in the car and I choose to circle around the block at the park, and we've got this little duck park by our house. And I figured maybe if I went for a walk without my car, that I could work through how I was feeling through my mind. I call it the duck park because at this point it's infested with probably 80 geese and the 1,000 ducks, which I know geese aren't even ducks, but in my mind, all birds are birds. So maybe I should call it geese park. Who knows? But the duck park is easier for now, at least for me. So as I pull into the park, I see a text from Lorna and it reads, "Hey, you forgot to take your hormone medication this morning." And I was like, there we go. Ding, ding. We've got a winner. And now how I'm feeling all makes sense. So for those of you who don't know, about twice a week for about 2 years now, I have been on hormone replacement therapy because my body no longer makes the amount of testosterone that I need. I've been on that bare minimum dosage since the start, although within 1 year, I've had to go from basically once a week to twice a week. The testosterone shortage in my body, it actually makes me feel many different ways when I don't have it. So for those of you who don't know, testosterone is responsible for building and maintaining lean muscle mass. So when I forget my dosage or when I'm off it for long periods, like when we travel, my muscles become more cramped and they start to feel a higher level of inflammation inside them. Another thing that I find happens when my test level is low is that my mood starts to change, and that's because my estrogen starts going out of whack as well, because when testosterone is high, estrogen is low, and vice versa. So you see, estrogen and testosterone, they act like a yin and yang inside the body. They're always fighting over dominance of the other. And it's actually that fluctuation of high estrogen that is responsible for my mood shift. Many people have this. And that's actually what I want to talk with you about today on this podcast. When many people speak with me, they tend to immediately tie their physical body aches and changes to their hormone profile. They talk about their weight gain, their joint pain, stomach bloating, their cold hands and feet, but they almost never attach how they are feeling emotionally and their mental clarity or lack of to the hormone shifts too. Your hormones are the regulators of every system in your body, physical, mental, and emotional. Now, before we get into how this happens and why, I do want to say that just because we can stabilize hormones doesn't mean you're never going to ever not feel again. We're not here to get rid of the emotions by doing this. We're here to help you manage some out of control emotions that are maybe coming up for hormonal reasons. So I tell everybody, including the people I coach, that you have to acknowledge your emotions and accept them as a part of what you are going through or what you're dealing with in that moment. A mentor of mine used to tell me to love is to confront, meaning you have to look at those emotions and not just pretend that they don't exist or that they're only a hormonal problem. So all emotions are real things, but some of them that get out of control, we can help adjust them with hormones. So there are people who experience real difficult stressors and they have past trauma, and that is stuff that they need to deal with. And those emotions, they're real. But what I'm talking about on a hormonal level is the shift and imbalance that the body processes as what I see is a fake emotion. Now, this appears in many different forms and even at seemingly random times. But when you recognize change within yourself, you can become aware enough to take back the wheel from your out of control hormones. So I'm sure some of you listening think this is probably just a women issue. That's what I hear from a lot of guys, but it's not. So as lately through COVID, we've been seeing exceptionally high levels of anxiety and depression, not just within women, but also within men as well. So a study in September 2020 actually showed that 62% of those men had zero experience with anxiety and with stressors prior to COVID, but now can't seem to get a handle on their emotions. So what happens from a hormone perspective that makes emotions such a challenge or out of the norm? Well, here's the interesting thing. It doesn't have to do with one particular hormone, as there's actually several hormones that have direct pathways to how you feel. But it's more about the gap of imbalance that the body has to actually overcome to change your other hormones. So what it is the imbalance between the two. So in terms of your hormones, there are three main hormones that are responsible for managing how you emotionally feel. And we're going to go through each of them. So you've got dopamine, you've got serotonin, and you've got oxytocin. So I'll go through each one of them individually. That way you know which each one does, because they all do different things in the body. So let's start with dopamine. Dopamine is literally your feel-good hormone. It is responsible for allowing you to feel pleasure, satisfaction, and motivation. When you feel good that you've achieved something, you're done something, it's because you have a surge of dopamine that goes through the neural processes in your brain. So dopamine plays a role in these functions like learning, keeping attention, your mood, movement, muscle contractions, your heart rate, your kidney function, blood vessel function, and your quality of sleep. So the way that dopamine works is it is produced by your neurons in the region at the base of your brain, so connecting basically to the stalk of your neck. And your body will make dopamine in a two-step process. First, it has to take in the amino acid tyrosine. So this you can get from foods, and we'll talk about that later. And tyrosine is basically a byproduct of food being broken down. And then your body will take that tyrosine and we will convert it into another amino acid called L-DOPA. Literally, that is what it is called. L-DOPA. It's not Spanish or Portuguese for anything. That's just L-DOPA. And that, for the record, is how I use my memory to keep track of all these terms. So when I go L-DOPA, because it sounds foreign, that's exactly how I remember this stuff. So you can say it that way if you want, and that'll help you remember too. But once we convert the amino acid to L-DOPA, it undergoes a final change as enzymes. So that L-DOPA will turn into an enzyme that turns into dopamine. So having low levels of dopamine has been linked to things like Parkinson's disease, restless leg syndrome, and depression. And the reason why is because it makes your body feel tired, it alters your mood, it can make you feel unmotivated, and make you feel like your body is completely drained physically, even though you may have just rested. So that's what dopamine does. Next, we have our serotonin, which is essentially our focus and our digestion regulator. So typically, nerve cells in the brain and in your spinal cord produce serotonin, and that helps regulate your attention, your behavior, and your body's temperature. So other nerve cells in the body, primarily in your intestines, they also produce serotonin as well. And what serotonin does is it plays a role in regulating your digestive process, your blood flow, and your breathing. But from a focus and a mental standpoint, serotonin controls your mood, so the behavior part, and it's responsible for happiness, your emotional feeling of happiness. So it helps regulate when you sleep and wake, helps you think, it maintains your mood, it helps control your sexual desire. When we're short of serotonin, so we have a shortage of it, you start to feel like you have a sad, depressed mood. You have low energy, you experience more random negative thoughts from nowhere. You have a feeling of tenseness and irritability. You'll exhibit the craving of sweets, and you're even going to have a reduced interest in sex. So all of these symptoms, they're closely tied to what people feel during depression and anxiety, that what people are facing nowadays. So finally, I want to talk about some oxy. Okay. Oxytocin, that is, just so you all know, no, it has nothing to do with Oxycontin, the drug, please. One is a drug, the other is a hormone, and they do totally different things. Okay. So oxytocin is actually your love hormone. So in your body, oxytocin is a natural hormone that stimulates uterine contraction in childbirth for females, but it also affects aspect of your human behavior and in the male and reproductive system. So it's responsible for creating desire and your attraction for things. Now, attraction for things could be sex-based things, or just the love of a good hobby or the love of a good habit. It helps in both ways. So an unrelated note, but actually still funny to me, I see this hormone talked a lot about love gurus. Like by love gurus are like, oh, you need more oxytocin, who like try to help you fall in love with someone else. So like they also think this hormone can like make men more attracted to you, like what's the best word? Like a sexy stench, I suppose. Something like that. Honestly, I think it's funny because I love what people will believe. But info on the web like this reminds me of like, oh geez, what was that cologne that was worn on Anchorman? You know the movie Anchorman? Oh man, I gotta look that up right now. Hang on. Give me a second here. What is it? I know exactly what it is. It's Sex Panther. That's Sex Panther. That's exactly what oxytocin is if you were to bottle it up, I suppose. So I love that movie. But I guess it's the Sex Panther of all hormones. That's what we'll call it. So anyways, getting back on track here, this hormone is actually important because people with chronically high cortisol or stressors, like very, very high amounts of stressors, they exhibit such low levels of oxytocin that you can actually affect your relationships with other people, which is crazy. So there's actually medically diagnosable conditions where people who cannot make this hormone always seem to find themselves in a lonely or depressed state. And that can actually be really sad. So all jokes aside, it's no joke having a downside of all three of these hormones, and all of these symptoms will appear randomly. So you won't realize it, but all of a sudden you'll get a swell up of a random depressed emotion or a random level of anxiety. And it could be because of one of these three. So with these three hormones, they all have a few things in common that we touched on pretty quickly. One, they're all partly responsible for how your emotional and mental mood is. And two, they're all majorly affected by excess levels of your stress hormone, cortisol, and can also be affected by really high levels of estrogen that someone can have within their body. So I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, when would I have a high of one or both of those? Like, when is my cortisol going to be high? When's my estrogen going to be high? How can I really tell that? Well, for starters, cortisol being your stress hormone, anytime you are experiencing chronic stress in your life, you're affecting your hormonal output from all three of these hormones we just talked about. And that's an inevitable part. Now, your body will have a little bit of a tolerance that you can take, but if it's chronic stress, then it's being affected all the time. So if you're like most of my clients and you have a corporate job or you work for yourself and maybe you're going through long hours at work and you're having a really worrisome time trying to build your business, trying to take care of your family, or maybe you've got 2 or 3 kids at home who you've got to focus on making food, combined with cleaning up, taking them to sports, paying your bills, making sure they don't get sick. You still have to balance your personal relationships as well. This is all the stuff that my clients kind of experience on the day-to-day. On top of that, you're going to add the added stress of trying to find time to eat right and take care of yourself. And don't forget, you still need to sleep a full 8 hours. Yeah, that's where your stress comes from. That's all of the chronic areas that we need to take a look at. And it's a long list. It is a long list. Another thing too, with the kind of lifestyle that people live now, it's also not a very realistic list for you to do all of those things and maintain all the time. So slowly, your stressors build up. And that means that the production in these other hormone areas starts to die down. You start to get less dopamine. You start to get less serotonin. You make less oxytocin. So cortisol at a very, very high level is all about essentially managing your stressors. You need to take a look at what are the 3 or 4 key areas of chronic stress that exist. And by chronic stress, I don't mean like you have emails every day. It might be like, I'm going through a divorce, or I have a crazy amount of overtime that I'm doing, or maybe I'm exercising 7 days a week at 3 hours a day. Whatever that is, you got to look at your high chronic stress areas and you got to bring them down. It's very easy to determine if you have high cortisol because you'll experience fatigue, you'll experience muscle weakness, and you'll start to feel these emotional and mental symptoms we talked about. Now, as for estrogen out of the two, that's an easy hormone to get out of whack, but fortunately, it's also the easiest one to control out of the two. Estrogen is really about your body fat management. So the higher amount of body fat storage that you have on your body, the more estrogen you're going to have. And that's because fat cells are the transport vehicle for the hormone estrogen. So basically, estrogen is used to control how much body fat you store and use. So it makes sense that if we allow estrogen to get out of whack, then it's also going to end up affecting how much we weigh. And then it's also going to affect how much energy you have to use and expel throughout the day. So this one tends to be more common with females, not because females gain more weight, but it's because females have a higher amount of body fat due to their cycles and that shift every month. So that makes it really hard for them to stabilize their estrogen on a more consistent basis, because every time you have a period, your estrogen is going to go up and it's going to go back down. Not to say that men don't have this issue. Men can still have this problem of estrogen, but only if they end up being low on testosterone. I won't go into that on this podcast. There's actually a great episode. I believe it's earlier in the series called Men's Hormone Guide. It talks all about this, the hormones that are needed in that area. So the estrogen part is about fat loss, or should I say your body's fat storage maintenance. Because when we adjust your storage maintenance to a stable level, this is where your metabolism can put out energy evenly. Your estrogen stays at a stable level, and it prevents you from having these estrogen highs. So how do we do that from an estrogen perspective? Well, we can do things like physical exercise. We can change up our nutrition into a slight deficit. And by doing that, we reduce the amount of excess fat that we have stored. Or we can improve your testosterone level and reduce both stored fat and your estrogen at the same time by building lean muscle tissue. which is how we do it with our clients. We hit both of them at the same time by just creating a good strength training program that will do both at the same time. So now that we know these two hormones are the culprits, I want to talk about how we correct these hormone changes. If you're low in dopamine, if you're low in serotonin, or you're low in oxytocin. Well, we correct them by fueling the body with the right hormone building blocks to make these hormones easier to produce. So let's talk dopamine first. Dopamine, I mentioned it before, it's made from tyrosine. So getting more of this amino acid from food is going to aim to boost your dopamine levels and your output of dopamine. So there's evidence that a diet also rich in tyrosine is also going to help improve your memory and your mental performance. So what are some foods that are high in tyrosine? Okay. Well, first thing that we're taking a look at is going to be our culture or our probiotics. So things like dairy actually have a high amount in them. So whether you're looking at a goat yogurt or goat cheese, or even like a low-fat Greek yogurt, that is really great. And also lean protein meats. So we're talking chicken, we're talking turkey. Those types of foods essentially have higher amounts of tyrosine in them because they're more fibrous with the protein tissue. Another thing as well too, bananas. A medium-sized banana has 22 milligrams of tyrosine, which is great. Avocados, pumpkin and sesame seeds. Those are great foods, and just a couple of foods that you can implement into your diet right now that will help with the dopamine perspective. So as we implement those into our routine, we're going to see the increase, and you're going to have that more happier mood eating those foods consistently. In terms of how much for the volume, for all proteins, no less than 6 ounces. And for the things like the vegetables or even the fruit, you want to have it at least a minimum of 2 to 3 times a week. And that's just going to go for all of these foods as a staple. Now, in terms of serotonin, there's 7 foods that are going to help increase serotonin levels. So protein in eggs can significantly boost your plasma levels in serotonin. Cheese, like we talked about, so having your goat cheese so anything that has a high level of culture or probiotics has a high level of this. Pineapples is great for this. Tofu, salmon, and we have your nuts and your seeds. So any type of nuts and seeds, you're looking at about a quarter cup. So whether it's almonds, cashews, pecans, whatever, Brazil nuts are fantastic, and you don't need a lot of them. They're great. Or even things like chia seeds and hemp hearts. They're also great as well too. Quarter cup is all you need. And turkey. Again, a lot of the same foods you're hearing. And the reason why we use the same foods is because if we can hit multiple of these things with the same food group, then that's great. Now, for oxytocin, this is going to be found in a different variety of foods. So you're looking for foods that basically contain vitamin D, vitamin C, magnesium, and foods with high dietary fats. Because high dietary fats, so basically your D, C, and your B vitamins, help create oxytocin. So a lot of fatty fish or a lot of food oils, so your avocado oil, your sesame seed oil, or any type of fatty fish is going to be great for this. Mushrooms is great for this. Peppers, so green peppers and red peppers. Tomatoes, spinach, and again, avocados. So there are great amounts of foods that you can implement, and I encourage you to implement these at least 3 to 4 times a week. So then that way you can adjust your hormone levels naturally, greatly improve your mood and your mental well-being. And best part about it is by just adjusting it through food, it's safe. You won't have to worry about overdoing it because it's just nutrients. It's not a supplement or it's not a medication. So that's what I wanted to talk about from the mood perspective. You can really adjust and shift your mood simply by taking a look at what hormones are necessary. And you will know if you're not mentally or even emotionally in a place where you usually are, because these emotions will appear randomly throughout. So you'll get a random wave of anxiety even though you're doing something that you've always done before, or you'll wake up and you will just feel depressed even though maybe something really great to you happened the day before. Those types of things are out of the norm for where mentally and emotionally people typically are, and that's the type of stuff that'll give you the signal for that. And while that's all for today's info on the episode, essentially, I also want to let you guys and gals know of our very first Black Friday sale that we have going on for the entire month of November on two of our programs. The first being the Hormone Reboot program, and the second being our group coaching program. So the Hormone Reboot program is an 8-week program that is specifically built and designed to help initially stabilize whatever excess highs you have in all of your hormones. So essentially all it is just like a computer. We work with you on the nutrition, on the training, and on your lifestyle to do kind of like a hard boot and a reset to get your hormones to that stable level. So with that, your hormones become stable. We can also work on things like weight through that process as well too, and your IBS and any inflammatory symptoms. And that's an 8-week process. So customized training, your nutrition support, the accountability, as well as access to our course code modules for the Hormone Reboot program, that is all built in. The second program is our group coaching program. This is our flagship program. So besides getting your customized nutrition, the support from the training, the accountability with your coach, you also get weekly access to our group coaching calls. The group coaching calls is where I'm doing intimate education with our group team solely on how you can manage each one of these hormones. So besides having us reset your hormones for you, we will also teach you how to be able to control, maintain, and make hormonal resets for yourself. So not only are you going to be able to reset your hormone panel and hit your health goals, at the same time, you're going to be able to be in a place where you have the confidence to understand what foods to eat for your body type, how to balance your hormones moving forward. We're going to make sure that all of your inflammatory triggers, any bloating, any constipation, any excess digestive issues get taken care of. And we're going to make sure that usually through this process, if people have a high body fat percentage as well, people lose anywhere from 2.2 to 2.8 pounds per week. Both of those programs are different. The Hormone Reboot is, like I said, like a hard reset for your hormones. And the group coaching program is a little bit longer. It's actually 16 weeks in terms of time. And that is not only the hard reset, it's also teaching you how to manage the hormones moving forward. With that, both of the programs until the end of November. So actually, it's going to be until December 3rd, because December 3rd is basically the last Friday of November of that week. I just kind of like to keep everything rounded out. So I'm a very structured every 7 days type of thing. Anyways, it's going to go, this offer is available until December 3rd. It is 30% off both programs. Now for the group coaching program, that's literally $1,000 off. So our group coaching program, you're going to get it at $1,000 off, which is great. Normally it's a 16-week program. Now with this as well, because we're going into the holidays, whether you sign up for either the Hormone Reboot program or the group coaching program, if you sign up as our Black Friday offer, you're actually going to get an entire month coaching all through December for free. So we love to support our clients over the holidays, and I don't want any of you guys and gals worried about what are we going to do over the holidays with this, because the nights out, eating with the family. So we will help coach you through all of that, in addition to doing your Hormone Reboot process as well too. So both of those programs are available. There is a link in the show notes for you to check out the programs if you want, as well for you to take a look and see if it makes sense for you. Read what's involved in the program. If you have questions, you can reach out to my email that's in the show notes, or my email is andrew@fitforallstudio.com. So that's FIT4ALL studio.com. And if you want the link for the program to apply for the program, it is going to be in the show notes. Otherwise, if for some reason you're like, Andrew, I can't find the show notes. There's a challenge. I'm just listening to you right now. And just go to our website, www.fitforallfitness.com. So that's FIT 4fitness.com. And then if you go under programs, you will see the programs that we offer there. You'll see the pricing for the Black Friday, because we don't hide stuff. Pricing doesn't change. It is what it is there. And if you've got questions, you can message me personally, or you can hit the application button and book a consultation with me for that. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode, and thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site? We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.